So to make it easier to work on this Turf Champs playfield, I got out my Pinball Playfield rotisserie, which I haven't used in a while, but basically you can mount a playfield on it and it will flip. You clamp it in place, it will literally flip from top to bottom, so you can work on each side and just flip it over to go back and forth. It's pretty convenient. The mechanism down here I decided to disassemble and remove in order to clean it properly. That meant taking off these all these mechanisms with the different reset bars and things like that. I did clean this up pretty well when I had it off, getting ready to put it back on. The horse selection unit is right here. This is what, when you turn the knob, which is here, will select the horse that you want to win. That was actually wired in underneath here, and unfortunately, to get that off, I had to disconnect all these wires from it because they passed through this grommet, and there was just no way to get it apart without, I suppose I could have cut the metal right there, but didn't want to do that. So got it all apart, cleaned this, putting it back together. Then I'll work on the rest of these various mechanisms that have to do with reset. This bank of relays in the middle, I can work on in place. There's no reason to take that off. And then the stepper unit up here, which I think has something to do with the odds. Haven't figured that out quite yet. I'll leave that in place partially, probably, because it's too hard to just disconnect all the wires and get that working good. So back to the Turf Champs. This is the playfield, top of the playfield. If you remember how it worked from the prior videos, you would first select your horse using this dial mechanism, which would have numbers on it. 1 through 7, you pick the horse, you put your coin in, and then the game would start. All 5 balls would go up to the top at once. They would all scramble around and come down the playfield, and whatever gate a ball went into first was the winner, 1 through 7. And also each game, one of these odds values would get randomly picked, sort of pseudo-randomly. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then if your horse that you bet on won, the machine would pay out that many coins. So like all these older machines, when you put the coin in the coin slide and push it in, it will push this reset bar, which moves. And it also causes some things down here to move, and this does several things. This resets the kicker, this lever here, which will kick all the balls, resets the relay bank with this bar that moves, and also does some functions up here. So do this all the way, let it release, and now the game has been reset if it had power, and it's ready to play. It has a timer, which a lot of these old machines had. This is actually just a lever in a clockwork mechanism, and it's got 2 main contacts that will turn the game off after a period of time. That's because these ran on batteries, and they didn't want the batteries to run down. All these relays are standard one-shot relays, where if you trip the relay, it stays tripped for the whole game. And 7 of them are for picking the horse. They whatever horse you pick with the rotary actuator, it will record it. And then 7 are for the winner. Whichever one wins, it will trip that relay. And then there's a couple more for other functions. This thing has to do with the odds. I'll explain that in a minute. And all this mechanism up here is the odds picker, and it's pretty clever. All these companies tried to make it so the odds were somewhat random and that you couldn't predict what was going to come up. And this one does it in a way I've never seen before. Basically, this ratchet will ratchet this drum around. Actually, it's a wiper. And each position is a different odd setting. And if you remember the front, there were six odd settings, I think. 2, 4, 6, 20, and 40, I believe. And the way that works is when you reset the machine, it pushes this lever, which then pushes this wheel and pushes the arm, and that rotates this odd selector a number of notches. It's anywhere from about 1 to 3. And a lot of that will depend on where this wheel is, and this post actually rotates kind of pseudo-randomly with each time you push this up. And where the post is relative to the lever, if it's up here, it'll advance the thing several notches, at least 2, like that. And if this post is down here, it will do it only probably 1. And so it added some randomness to the number of notches the odds wheel got advanced, which then in turn made it more random as far as what the odds were. This thing is pretty interesting, and I've seen other ways that they have done this. This is a kind of a cheater device where every time you reset the machine, it'll toggle from one side to the other. And what that does is when it's in one position, the maximum odds that it will pay out are 20. When it's in the other position, the maximum odds are 40. And the way they do that, usually it's set to 20 normally, and that's determined by this disc, and there aren't very many of them. And the 40 is when this is in one position and you get the proper position on the disc here, it will, instead of paying probably one of the lower ones, it switches like the 2 or 6 odds to 40. So the result of all that is every other time you play, there's no way you can get the 40 payout. So it's a way of actually multiplying the odds, making them more difficult. And they're already hard enough with the way this disc is set up, I'm sure, but this thing just toggles it, so you can't get 40 except when this is in one of the 2 positions. And of course, they don't tell you that.